Hey, what's ready? Welcome back to News Dose, and obviously the AI boom has a lot of people on edge right now. You know, prices just keep going up, and in fact, we got news yesterday about Valve's Steam Machine. Make sure to go watch that video if you haven't already. But yeah, things aren't exactly looking great for that console. However, we actually got some really good news from PlayStation, and I think this is something that we really need to talk about. Really just exciting stuff, in my opinion. Then also, in a bit of a surprise, Xbox seems to be skipping the Switch 2, or at least with one of their big games, and this is for one that a lot of people have been expecting for quite some time. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video, the early access. Let's go get right into things, though, starting off with a very exciting rumor, and that's because, allegedly, a Kingdom Hearts remake is currently in development. Now, this comes from Extasis TV, which, I mean, he has gotten some things correct in the past. Now, I'm not going to put him on the same trustworthy factor as somebody like Jez Corden, Nate the Hate, or Jason Schreier, but he has gotten some things correct in the past, and that's why I at least want to bring this rumor up. However, it is important to take this information with a grain of salt, but according to him, Square Enix is working on a remake for Kingdom Hearts 1 with some new content, such as a new Jungle Book world, and also some new Riku sections. And apparently, it'll be available in 2026 or potentially 2027. So if this turns out to be true, then I mean, we should hear about it relatively soon, maybe during the summer period, during all those showcases, but what I will say about this is that even though I'm not completely convinced just yet, I do, however, think that a remake for Kingdom Hearts makes sense. I mean, I've said it 100 times in this channel, but Kingdom Hearts is an amazing franchise. I really like this franchise. It's endearing. It's got a lot of charm to it. They're fun to play. They got fun stories, convoluted, but it's also one of the most poorly handled IP that I've ever seen. I mean, this is a game that launched way back on the PlayStation 2, and then they went out and they made like 100 sequels, none of which stayed on a consistent platform, and then by the time we eventually get to Kingdom Hearts 4, you know, we're in an entirely new generation filled with people that have never played these already very convoluted games. So I think a remake for the first game to reintroduce fans to the ultimate classic would be a good way to move into the eventual Kingdom Hearts 4. Now, they do have a collection of Kingdom Hearts games, which is probably an even better way to, complete the Kingdom Hearts series because you can play through the entire story. But I think with some flashy new graphics and some new gameplay mechanics, that could at least be a good entry point for newcomers, if anything else. So I hope this turns out to be true, and I'll simply leave it at that. Now, we also got some very welcome information for Digimon Story Time Stranger. Of course, it got its Nintendo announcement yesterday, which that's awesome to see. Definitely go check it out. But one thing that a lot of people were surprised about was that the Switch 2 version will have a 60 FPS option. And that's because it doesn't have that same option on, better hardware like the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. So it's kind of a weird situation when you start to think about it, but not anymore, because Bandai Namco confirmed that the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X will get a 60 FPS update as well. Now, we don't know exactly when that update will release, though, but I will let you all know when we find out more, because, I really do love the Digimon series, and I think more people should try this one out. Oh, and there's a big rumor floating around that the Nintendo Wii is soon going to come over to Nintendo Switch Online. And this is all because of some kind of error on the Nintendo website. Apparently, their official support page for the Switch 2 was showing the Wii Remote. And okay, to be fair, that looks and sounds pretty suspicious. Maybe this is a sign that the Wii is incoming, because clearly the Switch 2 is capable enough to play these type of games. The Wii is basically a beefed up GameCube, and GameCube games are already on the Switch 2. So hey, why not? The only problem with this idea, though, is that error wasn't just showing up on the Switch 2 support page. Apparently, it was also showing up on the 3DS and the Nintendo Music support pages as well. So, unless you believe the Wii is also going to come to things like the 3DS, then yeah, this is probably just an error and nothing more. Now, with that said, I do expect the Wii will eventually come to Switch Online. The fact that they're putting so much effort into the Virtual Boy out of all consoles, a console that absolutely flopped back in the 90s, that kind of tells me that they have plans to pretty much port over all of their consoles at some point, and especially for something like the Wii, which was a phenomenon back in the late 2000s. So yeah, it's going to happen, just probably not anytime soon, and I don't think that should be a problem because, well, they've barely even made a dent into the GameCube library. So let's give them some time with that before we start requesting the Wii, or at least in my opinion. But hey, you do you. All right, now speaking of Nintendo, though, there's been a lot of back and forth about Xbox and Nintendo's partnership. There's a lot of expectation that Xbox is going to have a lot of games for the Switch 2, which I believe will actually happen. I mean, we saw our first glimpse into that future just yesterday. They announced Oblivion Remastered, Fallout 4, and even Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which I thought was the biggest surprise of the three. In fact, the Switch 2 will actually be the only way to own a physical copy of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, which is honestly just kind of crazy to think about. But with that said, these are all Bethesda games. And because of that, you might be wondering about other Bethesda games like Doom the Dark Ages and especially the long-rumored Starfield. I mean, there's been heavy rumors about a Starfield port for both the PlayStation 5 and the Switch 2. And this has been going on for a long while now. Now, as far as I understand, a PlayStation 5 version will more than likely happen and probably relatively soon. We've currently been hearing about an April launch. I'll keep you updated with that information if we learn anything else, but however, according to new information, a Switch 2 version might not happen at all. Instead, according to Shinobi, the Switch 2 version has been postponed and it might even miss the console entirely. And what that tells me is that Bethesda has a version that they've been working on for the Switch 2, but something within its hardware is holding up its release. And I'd be very curious to know exactly what that issue is. Now, the only bottlenecks that I can think of is either the CPU or its storage speed. I mean, Starfield is a very CPU-heavy game with NPC schedules, there's background loading, there's physics, AI, and all kinds of things that could be intensive for the CPU. And then as for the storage speeds, Starfield does rely on a solid-state drive, and okay, while technically a lot of other games do as well, Starfield is kind of in a unique situation because its biggest complaint has always been specifically about its load screens. So maybe that issue is amplified on the Switch 2, and maybe because of that, they're taking some extra time to sort that situation out if they even can. What I'll say here, though, is that Starfield is playable on the Xbox Series S. So I think with some tinkering, Bethesda might be able to figure this out for the Switch 2. Again, it sounds like they've at least been working on it, so unless they just flat out gave up, then I don't think that this will be the end of the story. Instead, I would actually look towards other Bethesda games and how they perform on a Switch 2. I mean, if games like Oblivion Remastered and Fallout 4 sell very well on the Switch 2, that might be the green light for Bethesda to do anything within their power to get a Starfield port ready. Regardless, though, for right now, it sounds like a Starfield announcement will be inbound, but don't necessarily expect that announcement to include the Switch 2. All right, now one more thing before we go, though, and this is absolutely fantastic news for game prices. And I'm excited to say that because I never get to say that on this channel, but what's happening here is that Sony confirmed that they've secured enough RAM to last them at least until the end of 2026. And unless you've been living under a rock these past few months, you probably know what this is referring to. And that, of course, is the AI boom, which has caused shortages for things like RAM, which in return has spiked prices to an outrageous degree. I mean, RAM prices have doubled or even more than that in some cases than what it was just a few months back. And the scary thing about that is that reportedly, this AI boom could actually last several years. So prices could get a whole lot worse before they get better. In fact, we've also been hearing about a PlayStation 6 delay that could be by multiple years because the truth is, launching a new console in this type of environment is very risky, to say the least. I mean, just ask Valve about that problem, but what this new information means is that at least for 2026, the PlayStation 5 might actually be able to sit tight at its current price. Sony prepared ahead of time, and thankfully so, because now they're in a good, strong position for the foreseeable future. Now, as for 2027, I mean, we'll have to see how this year shakes out, but at least for now, gamers might be able to rest easy for at least when it comes to the PlayStation 5. Now, as for the Switch 2 and for the Xbox Series, on the other hand, I mean, it's hard to say what will happen to them as the year progresses. If they didn't prepare ahead of time like Sony did, then unfortunately they might have to raise price. Hopefully it won't come to that though, but again, I'm still excited that I can at least give you all some good news regarding prices in the year of 2026. It's sad that I'm excited to talk about this story, but I mean, it is what it is. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.